Thanks a lot and welcome to you.
Thank you, Faith. Thank you very much for having me.
I must ask you, we've got Joburg Mayor Hamid Mashaba that is saying that the reason why there was even a deployment of troops and well, the deployment of law enforcement and the deployment of individuals and raids was because of the letters that he had written. In other words, as the Home Affairs Department, you were just reacting to what he was saying. Are you agreeing with this? Are you not agreeing with the statement?
Faith, if you remember, those raids were conducted by police, South African police services. I did not even know that there's going to be something like that. The first raid where people were stoned. The second one, you could see the person who was leading that was Minister Begitsele. He left me in cabinet and told us he's going to lead a raid at the CBD.
And
because it's a job that... No, as I'm saying, he left us in cabinet and told us so. So I'm saying it's not Home Affairs which initiated those. It is police because it was a crime thing. They were fighting crime. It's not us in Home Affairs who said, go to the CPD, because fighting crime, even though Home Affairs belong to the JCPS cluster, the Justice Crime Prevention cluster, even though it belongs there, the job of arresting criminals doesn't belong to Home Affairs. Home Affairs only take over people through Home Affairs inspectors who are undocumented. But the person who's committing crime, it is police who do so, and that's what happened in the center of Johannesburg. So I'm not very sure why the mayor may think it's because of him.
I mean, on the other side of it, unfortunately, now it's a Home Affairs issue, isn't it? So it went from crime prevention and crime stop to now you're sitting with a situation where you've got about 659 foreign nationals which were detained. And on top of that, many of them, I think about 487 of them were actually undocumented. That says something really about the need to tackle head on, especially the immigration issue.
Yeah, but I'm sure you are aware that there have been cases in the magistrate court yesterday. Yes, so the numbers have somehow changed. They've ordered up to so far that 268 need to be deported. 111, they postponed the cases. In other words, there's no finality on the matter, and the rest of the people were released for producing one form of document or the other. So I'm just trying to give you the recent statistics.
Statistics at hand, granted. However, we still have undocumented citizens that are walking around this country that have been detained. Some are taken to Linda Repatriation Center. It does not change the fact that these foreign nationals are sitting there. Many of them have actually committed crimes. So it's unfortunately, in this instance, what are we doing when it comes to this issue of immigration? Because it's a...
No, Faith, I was not justifying anything. I was just giving you the recent numbers.
Okay.
It's definitely true. If you read my budget speech, which I delivered on the 10th of July, I was acceding to that we do have a problem of porous borders, and outline what the government is going to do, that the government has been aware of these porous borders for a long time. Because, Faith, when the borders are porous, it's not only about undocumented migrants. It's about all sorts of undesirable things. Drugs come in through the borders very easily. The counterfeit goods can be transported. Hijacked cars can just cross the border very easily. Women and child trafficking also. So it's all sorts of undesirable things. So the government agreed then that what we need here is a border management authority. Establish a particular structure. In the beginning they called it an agency, but then they changed and said let it be an authority. So that it becomes one authority who's dealing with the borders, because at the moment there are 7 different authorities. It's the Department of Home Affairs, it's Health, it's Agriculture, it's Environment, it's South African Police Services, it's the Army, it's SARS. So the Border Management Authority is going to put them there. So that bill took quite a number of years because, as you know, it's an emotive and very emotional contested issue. But the bill was passed in the National Assembly 2 years ago. Unfortunately, it got stuck in the National Council of Provinces. And our job now is to make it move out of the National Council of Provinces, let the act be passed. We've already appointed the project manager who has already worked on quite a number of things. Part of my visit to Swaziland yesterday, and I'm going to Lesotho border this Friday and back to Lubombo with Mozambique. It's next to Swaziland on Monday next week. I'm moving around them. part of my job, I'm also briefing my counterparts in those countries about this border management authority, what it's going to do, etc., etc. And I did so with my counterpart in Swaziland yesterday.
I want us to talk about the economic impact of actually having individuals that have been detained, number one, but also the cost of deportation, because after that they're being instructed to be deported. Who carries that expense of deportation?
Oh, it's the Department of Home Affairs.
Exactly. That is the money that is coming out of the Department of Home Affairs to deport individuals who, if there had been proper systems to actually take them in, whether through the border or not, right, a border management authority, as you're saying, then we wouldn't be facing a problem where in your very same budget speech now, you have to go back to that budget and say, deportation costs.
Your point being?
The point being that, unfortunately, money is coming out of the very same budget that you're trying to protect for the sake of advancing, especially the structures around Home Affairs. So how do we ensure that this problem, Doctor, does not happen again? What are we going to do?
Faith, I thought I was explaining to you that the state became aware of that at least 5 years ago, that this is a problem. That's why they thought the solution is the Border Management Authority. It's not Home Affairs.
Yeah.
That is a head of the Border Management Authority. By the way, it has been discussed in the GSPSA cluster. The cluster consists of all the government departments which have to do with the security of the country. The police, the army, the intelligence, justice, Home Affairs itself, etc. They sat and looked into this problem because it's not only a problem of, while Home Affairs Department is the key department, yes, they analyzed it and said, look, here we need the Border Management Authority. Yeah. And went to Cabinet and presented it. And the Cabinet approved it. So it's an issue of the South African government that to solve this problem, we need the Border Management Authority. But the Department of Home Affairs have to do its job in the meantime. When it comes across undocumented migrants who go, by the way, they don't just pick them on the streets and say you are undocumented, they throw them away. There are 5 refugee reception centers in South Africa.
And I want us to be able to talk into that issue. I've just got people in my ear saying that we need to wrap up the conversation. However, you mentioned very pertinent points. And I think that the point that I'm also making is the fact that, unfortunately, what ends up happening is that situations like this cause us to act much more faster. As you mentioned yourself, that 2 years ago, this was stuck. It was a document that was stuck for 2 years, when really, if it hadn't been stuck, you would have been equipped enough to actually action certain points. And that, for example, is something that is a learning, I think, even from a governmental perspective. Doctor, we're going to leave our conversation there. But thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Speaking there to Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi there just now, really speaking about the issues around Home Affairs, as you're speaking about those individuals that have been detained. 600 of them have been detained. And, of course, we've got about 487 of them that actually have been said to be undocumented. The conversation continues.